Howdy guys. I'm just going to walk through the review. That way you've got this video to look at if you need a little extra help on any of these questions. Skip around if you need to, if you only have questions about specific ones, or feel free to watch the whole thing. I'm going to skip the first page just because we did all of these in class, so you should have those done. If for some reason you don't have them done or you want to look back at them, the review key that I'm going to post will have these 4 questions completed. So we're just going to go ahead and get into the rest of the questions, starting here with the first section, okay? So do remember that the test, you will need to demonstrate your ability to solve by all 4 methods. And so in each of these sections, we've outlined what method you should use to solve, and you should do that so that you have the practice on each one of the methods so that you're ready to do it for the test. So this first section, we're solving by factoring. So let's take a look. Oopsie. All right. Looking at this one, we've got a trinomial, 3x squared minus 7x minus 6 equals 0. When you're solving by factoring, you always want to first make sure that your equation is set equal to 0. This one is. So I'm going to go ahead and factor it. I'd use the x method, so I'm going to do a times c is negative 18, b is negative 7, and a is 3. I want to figure out what 2 numbers will multiply to 18 and add to 7. That would be 9 and 2. I want a negative 7, so I'm going to make it a negative 9 and a positive 2. This fraction can be reduced into negative 3 over 1. I'm going to write my 2 factors. So one of them is 1x minus 3, and the other is 3x plus 2 equals 0. Remember that we are solving, which means we need to get our answers in the form of x equals a number. So I need to take each one of these factors and set it equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0, and 3x plus 2 equals 0. I'm going to solve for x in each one. Plus 3, that means x equals 3. And on the other side, minus 2, 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3, x equals negative 2 over 3. So those are our 2 solutions. Those are our 2 x-intercepts for this quadratic function. All right, number 2, we're still solving by factoring, but notice that this equation looks a little more complicated. I don't have something equal to 0. I need to rearrange it. I need to move some things around so that I've got 0 on one side. I'm going to move all of these pieces from the right to the left. So I'm going to add 5x squared, I'm going to add 8x, and I'm going to add 2. Okay, that's going to leave me with 0 on this side because every term cancels out. Over here, I'm going to have x squared, oops, not plus, minus 6x minus 16. Am I doing correct math there? Yes. Okay. Now I've got a trinomial equal to 0. I'm going to factor it. I want 2 factors of negative 16 that add to 6. If you want to set up the x method here, you are more than welcome to do that. I want 2 factors of negative 16 that add to negative 6. That would be 2 and 8, negative 8 and positive 2. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. Minus 2. That means x equals negative 2. Plus 8, x equals 8. Number 3 here, we run into the same problem. We need to make this equation equal to 0, so I'm going to take 14x and move it to the other side by subtracting. And when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put these in the correct order. I want it to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So 2x squared minus 14x minus 240 equals 0. Notice on this one, we've got a greatest common factor. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. If you don't, you'll still end up with the same answer in the end. So it's not a big deal, but it does make factoring a little bit easier if I go ahead and divide everything by 2. So that's going to be x squared minus 7x minus 120 equals 0. I want two factors of negative 120 that add to negative 7. Let's refresh on how we find factors in the calculator. So over here in my calculator, I'm going to hit y equals. I'm going to put in the number that I want factors of. So you could put negative 120 or 120. Remember, with negative numbers, we're going to strategically put the negatives where we need them. I'm dividing by x, and then I'm going to go to the table. I want to find a pair of factors that add to 7. So looking here, that would be the numbers 8 and 15. Because I want them to add to a negative 7, I need the 15 to be the negative number. So this is going to be x minus 15 times x plus 8. Okay, take each of those factors, set them equal to 0. Ran out of room down there, so I'm going to do it up here. X minus 15 equals 0. That means x equals 15. And x plus 8 equals 0. So that means x equals negative 8. Okay, I've got all my terms on one side with 0 on the other side here, but notice that they're not in the right order. So let's go ahead and reorder them. I just need to move this 3 to the end. Now, because it's staying on the same side of the equal sign, I don't need to change the sign. Oops, I didn't mean to highlight that. Okay, what I was saying is, because this 3 is not moving to the other side of the equal sign, it's staying on this side, I'm not going to change the sign. It's still a positive 3. It's just being moved to the end. So this would be rewritten as x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. Factoring it, I want two factors of 3 that add to negative 4. 3 only has the factors 1 and 3. So my factored form would be x minus 3 and x minus 1. If I set each of them equal to 0, x minus 3 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0, that's going to be x equals 3, and x equals 1. All right, here at the end, we've got 2 word problems. Let's read through these. Number 5 says that the length of a rectangle is 6 meters more than its width. As soon as I see I'm describing something about a rectangle, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. It doesn't really matter which way you draw it, but I'm going to draw it this way. Okay, the length of a rectangle is 6 meters more than its width. So let's call the width x and the length x plus 6 because it is 6 meters more. Then it tells us that the area of the rectangle is 135. Remember, area is length times width. So the length is x plus 6. The width is x. That means I'm multiplying these two things together, x times x plus 6. And that equals 135. Now I'm in the section that's about solving by factoring, which means I need to make this into something that I can factor. So I'm going to distribute x times x and x times 6. That's x squared plus 6x equals 135. To factor, we need to be equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 135 from both sides. That's going to look like x squared plus 6x minus 135 equals 0. I need two factors that will multiply to negative 135 and add to 6. Let's go back here, put in some numbers. 135 divided by x. Oops, second graph. I'm looking for a pair that adds to 6, and I see 9 and 15 have a difference of 6. I want it to be a positive 6, so I'm going to do x plus 15 and x minus 9. For solving, we want to set each of those factors equal to 0. So that will be x plus 15 equals 0 and x minus 9 equals 0. Okay, now I want, well, let's go ahead and solve in both of these. X equals negative 15 and x equals 9. Now we're talking about length and width. And so I've got two solutions here. This is not length and width, x equals negative 15 and 9. Remember, x was my width, and then my length was 6 more than that. So I need to figure out which one of these solutions actually is my width. If we're talking about a length or a distance, a measurement of some sort, I'm not going to be able to have a negative side length. So really, the width of my rectangle is 9. And 15 I can throw out. Remember that with word problems, sometimes we got to think about what makes sense in the context of the problem, not just what did the algebra steps give me as my answer. Oh, and now that I'm rereading the question, it says find the dimensions, length and width. So if this 9 is the width, then length would be 6 more than that, so positive 15. There we go. Okay, number 6 says the product of two consecutive integers is 132. Find the integers. So remember that product means to multiply. Consecutive means one after the other. And I want to find two numbers, one after the other, who can be multiplied together to get 132. So I want you to think about if I'm at 1, just the number 1, the next consecutive number would be 2. To get from 1 to 2, I add 1. So same thing happens if I'm at 150 and I want to get to 151, I add 1. So if I'm at one number, to get to the next consecutive number, we just add 1. So we don't know what the numbers are. It's a mystery. So I'm going to call the first number x, and I'm going to call the second number x plus 1. And if I multiply these two things together, it should equal 132. Now I've got a problem very similar to the last one. I'm going to distribute. That's x squared plus 1x equals 132. I want it to be set equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 132 from both sides. That would be x squared plus x minus 132 equals 0. I want to find a pair that will add to 1. So that's 12 and 11. I've got x. Sorry, I'm losing it here. Negative 132, positive 1. So that'll be x minus 11 times x plus 12 equals 0. My two solutions would be x equals 11 and x equals negative 12. I want two consecutive integers, so one after the other. That would either need to be negative 11 and negative 12, or 11 and 12. All right, first page done. Second page, we are solving by taking square roots. So let's zoom in here. First one. I've got an x squared term and an 8. I'm solving by taking the square root. I want to get this term by itself. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. X squared equals 72. I'm going to now take the square root of both sides. X equals, now 72 doesn't have a whole number square root, so depending on your teacher, you might leave it as positive negative square root of 72. Or maybe you would simplify this radical. So I'm going to look at the factors of 72. Got 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24, 4 and 18, 6 and 12, 8 and 9. Those are all the factors. Notice I've got a few perfect squares in here. So the biggest of them is 36. So your teacher might also want you to write this in a different simplified format as 6 times the square root of 2. All right, number 8, I've got an x squared term, so I'm going to first move 240 over to the other side. That's going to be 2x squared equals 288. I need to get x squared by itself, so I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. I do have to do that step first before I can take the square root, according to our orders of operations. X squared equals 288 divided by 2 is 144. Now I'm ready to take the square root. And the square root of 144 is positive or negative 12. Oh my goodness, my Zoom is not working here. Okay. Number 9, we've got a couple more layers here in solving, but we're still wanting to isolate this term here. So overall, we need to first get this this binomial by itself. So I need to get rid of this 3 and this 7 in that order. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That'll be 7 times w plus 3 squared equals 63. I still want to get that binomial by itself, so divide by 7. W plus 3 squared equals 9. I'm now at a step where I can take the square root of both sides. W plus 3 equals positive or negative 3. Then I'm subtracting 3. I've got W equals negative 3 plus or minus 3. Now, both of these are whole numbers. I'm going to go ahead and write that as my 2 whole number solutions of W equals negative 3 minus 3, so negative 6, and W equals negative 3 plus 3, so 0. Right? Over here, I'm going to need to get this binomial by itself so that I can get t solved for. There's nothing being added or multiplied, so I'm going to go straight to taking the square root of both sides. That's t minus 2 equals positive negative square root of 24. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. That's t equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 24. Again, depending on who your teacher is, they might want you to simplify this even further underneath the radical. So I'm going to think of factors of 24 or 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8. There we go. 4 and 6. All right. Looking in this table, I do have one perfect square, and that perfect square would be 4. So I could also write this as t equals 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 6. All right, subtracting 13. 2t minus 3 squared equals 49. Take the square root, 2t minus 3 equals positive or negative 7. Add 3 to both sides. Two t equals 3 plus or minus 7. Okay, I need to think about this in 2 parts here. I don't yet have t by itself, but I've got kind of 2 solutions being represented here. So I'm going to go ahead and split this apart into 2 things. This is the same thing as 2t equals 3 minus 7. So 3 minus 7 would be negative 4. Or 2t equals 3 plus 7. 3 plus 7 would be 10. If 2t equals negative 4, then t equals negative 2. It's one of my solutions. And if 2t equals 10, then t equals 5. Number 12 says 4x squared minus 80 equals 0. I'm going to first add 80 to both sides. 4x squared equals 80. I need to divide by 4. X squared equals 20. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. X equals positive or negative square root of 20. Or, if I think about the factors of 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Got one perfect square there. So I could also write it as x equals positive or negative 2 square root of 5. Last one here for us on this page is a word problem. In science class, the students were asked to create a container to hold an egg. They would then drop this container from a window that is 25 feet above the ground. If the equation of the container's pathway can be modeled with the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus 25, how long will it take for the container to reach the ground? So if it's reaching the ground, that means that h equals 0. The height of the container in the air would be 0. So all we're doing here is taking this equation, and we need to replace h with 0. Now we're solving for t squared to figure out the time. Minus 25, negative 25 equals negative 16t squared. I'm going to divide by negative 16. So now I've got 25 over 16 equals t squared. Take the square root. I've got t equals square root of 25 over 16 is just the square root of 25 over the square root of 16, so 5 over 4. And it technically in the equation would be positive or negative 5 over 4, but it doesn't make any sense for us to measure time in the negative. So our answer is 5 over 4 or 1.25 seconds. All right, page 4. Almost there. So solve the following quadratic equations by completing the square. Leave your answer as a simplified radical. Okay, to complete the square, remember we are taking half of b and squaring it. Depending on your teacher, your steps might be slightly different. So if your teacher taught you to make a whole here by adding that number over to the other side, you can definitely start by doing that. So maybe you move this over and make it a positive 33 first. That's totally fine. In my class, we kind of just talked about b. We cut b in half and we square it. So half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. I want this number to be a 16. So I want to think about, if you made a whole there, you would just put plus 16 on both sides. But I currently don't have a 16. I want to make it a 16. So negative 33. I need to add 49 to both sides. Okay, at this step, even if you made a whole by moving 33 over, you should still have 49 here. So now we're ready to go ahead and factor this. We know that it's a perfect square trinomial, which means it will factor into x plus half of b, so plus 4 squared equals 49. And at this point now we're just solving for x. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. I've got x plus 4 equals positive or negative 7. I am subtracting 4. That's going to give me x equals negative 4 plus or minus 7. So x equals negative 4 minus 7 would be negative 11. And x equals negative 4 plus 7, which would be positive 3. All right, I want this side to be a perfect square trinomial, so I'm going to take half of b would be negative 10. Negative 10 squared equals 100. I want the third term in this trinomial to be 100. Currently, I don't have a third term, so I'm just going to add 100 to both sides. Okay, x squared minus 20x plus 100 equals negative 19 plus 100 is 81. I'm going to factor. I know it's a perfect square trinomial, so it's going to be x minus 10 squared equals 81. Now remember that if you forget that rule, how to make this factored form without actually factoring it, like by hand, you can always do the factoring. Like you can do the X method, you can do whatever your preferred factoring method is, and you will still end up with X minus, or X minus half of B squared. So if you need to verify it, feel free to do that. We're continuing by solving for X, so I'm going to take the square root. That brings me here, X minus 10 equals the square root of 81, which would be positive or negative 9. And then I want to add 10 to both sides. So I've got X equals 10 plus or minus 9. Now these are both whole numbers, so this is X equals 10 minus 9, which would be 1, and X equals 10 plus 9, which would be 19. An easy mistake to make on these is taking the square root of this number and just putting 9 here. If you just put 9 and you just add 10, you only end up with one of your solutions, but this is quadratic. We have the potential for 2, and if we're missing one of them, then we will not get the question fully correct. All right, on this one, I've got a little rearranging that I need to do first before I can work on it. I want to get my X squared and my X term together on one side. I don't want to have this rogue X floating around. So I'm going to first move this X over to the other side. I could technically move the 14 if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it here. If you do move it, that's okay. You should still end up with the same answer in the end, as long as the rest of your steps are also correct. So like I said, I'm going to subtract X from both sides. Here I need to combine like terms. I've got 9x and negative x. That's going to be x squared plus 8x. I'm going to leave some space because I know I'm going to add a number in there, and then equals negative 14. I want to pick a third term so that it's half of b squared. Half of b would be 4. 4 squared would be 16. I want this to be a 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Well, let me do that in a different color so we know it's a different term. Okay, that'll be x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals negative 14 plus 16 is 2. I need to factor it, so that's x plus 4 squared equals 2. I need to take the square root, take the square root. That's x plus 4 equals the square root of 2. Oopsie. Minus 4 on both sides. X equals negative 4. Oh, hey, I forgot something. My plus and minus. That is real ugly. Let me start over here. X equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 2. There we go. All right, running into something on this one that we haven't on the past few, but you might notice that A is a number other than 1. It is currently 3. And remember that we only really want to complete the square when A is 1. So I'm going to first divide everything by 3 in order to make that coefficient a 1. Okay, that's going to be x squared minus 6x plus 15 equals 0. Half of b is negative 3. Negative 3 squared equals 9. I want this number to be a 9. It's not currently a 9, so I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides to make it a 9. If you made a whole here, you would have subtracted 15 over to the other side, and then you'd just be adding 9. So remember, your steps could vary slightly here, but we should all be back on the same page for this next part whenever we get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals negative 6. I'm going to factor it. That's x minus 3 squared equals negative 6. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And something you hopefully notice here is that we are now trying to take the square root of a negative number, which we cannot do. If you ever reach a point when you are solving and you are trying to take the square root of a negative number, that is not possible. Your answer will be no solution. So, saves us a little bit of work on that one. We can stop as soon as we notice that. Couple more here on this page. So, half of b is 2. 2 squared is 4. This is not currently a 4, so I need to add something to make it a 4. And I'm going to add 36. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 36. I'm going to factor it, so that's x plus 2 squared equals 36. Take the square root of both sides, and I've got x plus, oh my goodness, x plus 2 equals positive or negative 6. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And that gives me x equals negative 2 plus or minus 6. That would be x equals negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. I need to start out with my x squared and my x term on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 16x over. That's going to be x squared minus 16x equals negative 92. Let me go ahead. Again, on this one, I'm going to leave a little bit of space because I know I need to add a number in there. Okay. Right, so b is negative 16. Half of that is negative 8. Negative 8 squared is 64, so I'm going to add 64. Negative 92 plus 64 is negative 28. I've got, in factored form, x minus 4 squared equals negative 28. Take a square root, take a square root. Notice that I'm taking the square root of a negative again. Can't do that, so this is no solution. All right, that's it on that page. One last page where we talk about quadratic formula. Okay, here is the quadratic formula up here in the corner. Remember that this is also on your formula chart, but it'll also be printed on your test as well. So no need to memorize it, but please make sure that you do understand how to put things in it and that you don't make calculator mistakes because this should be the easiest part. Don't lose points on the small things, okay? So solve using quadratic formula. Looking at this one, I've got A, B, and C. I'm going to take those numbers and plug them into my formula where they belong. Really to save myself the writing and the time, I'm going to go ahead and find the discriminant first. Remember that the discriminant is this piece. Where's my highlighter? There it is. The discriminant is this piece that's under the square root. I'm going to find that, and remember that that can tell me how many solutions I'm going to have. It can save me a little bit of work as I'm going through these. So I'm going to find the discriminant first on each one of these. So that would be negative. Nope, not negative. That would be 4 squared minus 4 times 17 times negative 15. So 4 squared minus 4 times 17 times negative 15. The discriminant is 1036. Notice that that's a positive number, so I know I'm going to have 2 solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the quadratic formula. It's x equals negative b, so negative 4 plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which we just found, so 1036 over 2 times a, so 2 times 17. Now I'm just going to put this simplified form into my calculator, and then I'll do it once with a plus, once with a minus. Okay, I need a fraction, so that's negative 4 plus the square root 1036 over 2 times 17. Okay, that gives me a wacky decimal. I'm going to put it in again with a minus sign. Another wacky decimal. Okay, so this is a point where we might differ based on your teacher. You might just your teacher might just want you to write your answer as simplified as decimals. So I'm going to write those down here. X equals 0.829 and x equals negative 1.064. That could be one possibility. Your teacher might also want you to leave it in this form but simplify it. So I'm going to simplify this radical. What am I doing? Hitting y equals. Oops. Hitting y equals. Clear. What factors of 1036? Goodness, if I typed it in right. Divide by x. Okay, I'm just getting all these copied down. And then I'm going to look for perfect squares in here. Okay, then 37 and 28. So let's see. I don't think any of the rest of these are perfect squares. Yep, the biggest perfect square I see here is 4. So this one is not very pretty, but you could technically simplify it as x equals negative 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 259 over 34. Again, not the prettiest thing in the world, but depending on your teacher, they might want you to simplify it like that. Okay. All right, let's see how the rest of these look. We're almost to the end. You need to solve by taking the square root, you need to solve by quadratic formula. Remember that we need to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So I'm going to subtract 22x in order to make sure that we're equal to 0. X squared minus 22x plus 121 is equal to 0. Now I have a is 1, b, and c. I'm going to find the discriminant first just to maybe save myself some work. So that's b squared, that's negative 22 squared, minus 4 times a times c. Oops, there we go. Okay, now please, 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 please remember that if you are squaring any number, whether that number is positive or that number is negative, when you square something, it will always become a positive. So if you are in the calculator and you don't put these parentheses around a negative number before you square it, just like that, then look what your calculator does. It gives you a negative. It does bad math because you gave it bad instructions. So make sure that you either put parentheses around it before squaring, or go ahead and make it positive because you know that it's going to be a positive number after you square it. Okay? All right. There's my little mini rant. So I need 484 minus 4 times 1 times 121. That's 0. Okay, remember that when your discriminant is 0, you're only going to have one solution. So this is going to be x equals negative 22 plus or minus the square root of the discriminant. So the square root is 0 over 2a, which is 1. This one can simplify a little bit. X equals negative 22 is just 22. Plus or minus the square root of 0. Well, the square root of 0 is just 0, so I'm not adding or subtracting anything. And 2 times 1 is 2. That's the same thing as 11. So x equals 11. Keep trying to zoom, and it draws a line. Rearrange, get it all on the same side. 2x squared plus 7x minus 13 equals 0. I'm going to get the discriminant. D equals 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 13. $153. So quadratic formula would be x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root. Oh, don't need it to be that big. The square root of the discriminant, so 153 over 2 times a, which is 2. So that's going to be negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 153 over 4. Negative 7 plus the square root of 153 over 4. And then I'm going to do the same thing but subtract it. Okay. X equals 1.342 and x equals negative 4.842. You might simplify it. Let's see if 153 has any perfect square factors. I'm not sure that it does. really far down in my table. Ooh, it does have 1. Look at that, 17 and 9. So I could also rewrite this as x equals -7 plus or minus 3 times the square root of 17 over 4. So you might have your teacher might want you to write it like that or write it in the rounded version. 2 more questions. Here's A, B, and C. Discriminant is going to be 9 squared minus 4 times -3 times 7. 9 squared minus 4 times -3 times 7. That equals 165. X equals -9 plus or minus the square root of 165 over 2 times -3. That's -9 plus or minus the square root of 165 over -6. I'm going to look for perfect square factors of 165. And I don't think it has any, so I'm going to either leave your answer like this or go round it. So that'll be -9 plus the square root of 165 over -6. X equals -0.641 and x equals 3.641. I'm just double checking, making sure I did all these right here. Okay, I think that all looks right. A toy rocket is launched from a platform that's 48 feet high. The rocket's height above the ground is modeled by h of t equals this function right here, where t represents time in seconds. Use the quadratic formula to determine the time it will take the rocket to hit the ground. Just like we did on the past few, I'm going to go ahead and find the discriminant. So that would be 32 squared minus 4 times -16 times 48. That is 4,096. I'm going to set it up in the formula. X equals -32 plus or minus the square root of 4,096 over 2 times -16. That's going to be -32 plus square root 4096 over 2 times -16. It's -1. And let's get my other answer. Place that with a minus, +3. So x, let me erase this. X equals -1 and x equals 3. But remember that we're talking about time, so our correct answer would be 3 seconds and not -1 seconds, because we don't measure time in the negatives. Okay, a little under an hour for that whole review, but make sure you go back if you've got any questions, rewatch them. If you're still confused, make sure that you come in for tutorials before your test is happening. Make sure this is done, and please make sure that your packet is done if or whenever you come in for your test. All right. Good luck, guys, and I'll talk to you later.